Hello, hello, Unconferencers. My name's Elizabeth McCumber, and I'm here to talk about personal development. Ah, yes, everyone's favorite pandemic topic. What? No? You can barely survive this year, let alone try to grow? Ah, yes, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing that. And I'm feeling it myself. So, as a lover of personal growth, I've had to adjust my stance and actually take a little bit more realistic approach to self-help. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me ask you a couple questions first. When have you said there aren't enough hours in the day? It might be a variation of that. I just don't have enough time. When is it all going to get done? This is impossible. Especially now, it might be harder than it ever was before. Okay? Now, maybe you've also heard something like, when are you getting married? When are you going to have a baby? When are you going to have another baby? When are you getting engaged? When are you going to apply for another job? When are you moving? Anything like that? I don't know if you're like me. I have in-laws that are baby crazy, so I get a lot of questions, whether it's personal related or professional otherwise. You might get some questions like this. Now, when have you thought something more along the lines of, I should be further along? It's a little bit more serious, but maybe you had some sort of thought like this along the way of your life. Man, I thought that things would be different at this age. I thought that my life would go differently. Now, those questions range a lot in their seriousness and their tone, but they all boil down to something big, and that's pressure. Now, I'm someone who can easily feel the pressure in any situation, and it's forced me to dig a little bit deeper into why it is I feel that pressure and how to get away from it. Now, especially as someone who wants to pursue better, that can be hard. Hey, again, I'm Elizabeth. I'm a digital marketer by day and a personal growth lover and a pressure hater. So, what does someone like me do who always wants to be better and yet not feel crappy about it all the time? Well, I come to the question, how can I pursue better without adding pressure? It sounds simple in some ways. To be better, you don't necessarily have to feel the pressure, but to me, it's something that I've struggled with. And I especially started to notice this when I started to pursue the OM. Take a deep breath with me. Yeah, 2020 needs another deep breath. Thank you for playing along. If you did, if you didn't, I see you. Now, for me, this OM started with a book called 10% Happier. It's about meditation and how you can improve your life. I love self-help books. I said, yeah, that sounds great. Plus 10% happier sounds very doable. I like that. So I read the book and I realized that meditation was what I need. And if you've ever read anything in the last years or so, you'll know that meditation has been getting a lot of good press. Oh, it reduces stress. Science backs it. There's so many benefits. Articles everywhere are dying to tell you about it. Places from Forbes to HBR to your weird alumni magazine that comes out regularly. Now, as a good self-help devotee, I went to Headspace. I said, okay, let's build a habit. And while I thought I was going to get to this place, I didn't. I was surprised because, in fact, pursuing meditation, this stress reducer, actually made me feel more like this. I don't like failure. I don't like thinking that I can't do something, I can't improve. So it forced me to dig a little bit deeper, especially into this meditation. And with that, I realized that the self-improvement that adds stress wasn't really self-improvement after all. You might have had something like this happen yourself, where you're pursuing something, a goal or a habit that should hopefully improve your life, and in fact, it doesn't. You spend more time trying to achieve that than you do actually going after what your main goal is. Now, I consider this your version of better. Now, some people hate the word better. It's like pineapple on a pizza. They're not there for it. Some people don't mind it. Other people even love it. I like Hawaiian pizza. I'm okay with it. But the word better is pretty broad. In fact, it's too broad. And I kind of use it as a placeholder here. But my point is you actually need to get much more specific with your better. That being said, we can all recognize, quick disclaimer, 2020, terrible, right? It's lit and not in a good way. So I understand if you might be hesitant, kind of like I started talking about at the beginning of this presentation. Oh, you want me to be better? I'm just trying to survive. I also have gone through 2020 with a lot of ups and downs. So I understand that pursuing better and personal growth might not be top of your list, but everyone does have to survive. And sometimes that specific version of better might just be making it through the day, and that's okay. But what I feel like really gets us with better are a few traps. And these traps are reasons why some people don't particularly like the word better or don't like this whole idea of self-improvement. There's some traps here. The first one is that transformation is always the goal. I see this a ton on social media. You always see these transformation Tuesdays of people that lost hundreds of pounds. And it's never 5 pounds. It's never, I took more steps today than I did yesterday. It's always, wow, look at that. And of course, we want to celebrate these big wins, and people should be celebrated. But what happens is when we only see or we exaggerate some of these wins, that's what we see and as we think has to be the goal. And maybe you aren't a caterpillar that needs to turn into a butterfly. Maybe you're a butterfly that just wants to fly a different way. It's a little bit cheesy, but whatever. I think you get what I'm saying. Often, because we celebrate transformation so much, we think that that is the only version of better. It has to be so extreme. Another trap is you must suffer for growth. I think that we've learned that we've suffered enough this year. And yes, of course, you're going to learn a lot of lessons from the mistakes. Hopefully you do, and you want to. But it's not a rule that you have to suffer for growth. There's no reason why you can't look back on positive experiences and accomplishments and learn from those too. That's okay. A lot of times within the self-improvement space, it's all about going through the struggle and the hard times. And it's really more of a product of the fact that that's when we as people look for that information. That's often when we're reflecting because we're trying to change course. And again, we should do that. But that's not the only time that we can grow. That's not the only time we can pursue self-improvement. Another trap with pursuing better is thinking that balance is the ideal. Everybody wants to talk about balance. You balance your work and your home life, and you balance this and that. You balance the demands of everything in your life. And a lot of times when we're thinking of what balance is, we're seeing this. We're seeing the perfect scales just right there, nice and equal. Whereas oftentimes balance is more like this. You have a lot of different things in your life, and you're really just trying to keep them straight. But with balance, using that word, we're sometimes applying the wrong idea, the wrong version of that idea. So how do we get over this? Now that we've seen some of the traps, how do we move forward? First, to identify your better, you have to look at how do your goals connect to your true version of better. So for me, I wanted to be calmer. I wanted to be less stressed. I can be a little bit high-strung kind of person. So that's why I pursued meditation. But if I only looked at what am I trying to do on a daily basis, I would say I'm trying to sit down and meditate 10 minutes a day. And I can get so focused on that that I don't really take the time to say, why am I doing this? So think to yourself, especially for a habit that was really hard to implement or one that you might feel like you failed at, can you, right off the top of your head, think of what exactly that habit had to do with your grander goals, what you were pursuing? Again, this version of better can be whatever you want it to be. It can be calmer, it can be stronger, it can be a lot of different things, but it should be specific. It should be specific to you. And every habit that you're trying to build should connect to it very clearly. Another breath, can we? Better. Now, let's talk about the pressure. This is how I started the presentation, right? Because this is something that I think really hinders us from finding that better as well. Now, the different kinds of pressure sometimes are very clear and sometimes are more subtle. The first is the external pressure you feel from society. And by this, I'm talking about Instagram, talking about the advertising you see, talking about all the places that you get messaging that you may or may not realize. I think especially with recent documentaries and different news, we know that social media can have some pros and cons, and it helps to deliver this external pressure to us without us even necessarily knowing it. Now, another kind of external pressure is that more personal pressure for people that you do know. This is pressure from people called mom or dad. Sometimes it could be your siblings. It could be that judgy aunt that always has an opinion about things, because I think we all have one of those. Hi. But it's from people that you do know. It doesn't have to be family. It could be in the workplace as well. Maybe it's your boss or your coworkers. There's different kinds of pressure from the people around you. It's external, but you do know them. And then finally, you might be feeling pressure that's just internal. You might say, I get what you're saying about pressure, but it's all from me. And I certainly feel that way too. Again, I've talked about how much I love growth, so I always want to push myself. But this internal pressure doesn't always just come from you, of course. It's how you're internalizing the other kinds of pressure that is external, and how you're applying it to yourself. Now, I've been talking so much about pressure. Sometimes we think it's obvious, but it might not be. When you think of peer pressure, you think of someone at a party saying, oh, you should drink this beer. I don't want to drink this beer. Oh, drink the beer. He drinks the beer, right? He gets drunk anyhow. Every teen movie, right? You think of the peer pressure to fit in. And that's certainly alive and well, but there are a lot more subtle kinds of pressure as well, especially for adults. So here are some signs. The first is seeking a lot of opinions. When we feel that we're under a lot of pressure or we're so used to having it, we often go out of our way to validate our choices. We're looking for that because we're so used to trying to fit in and trying to work with that pressure. So if you can't make a decision without texting your best friend, maybe that's a sign. Or if you feel like you can't make the pick between two jobs without calling a million people, that could be because you're feeling a certain kind of pressure. Doesn't mean that you give into that pressure, but it means that it's there in some way or another. Another sign is checking your stats. This could be on social media, or this could be even more professionally as well. Maybe it's your sales goal, things like that. A lot of times when we're looking for that external validation, we're also looking at what kind of metrics we have on ourselves. It can be good to look at things like this. If you have goals, I have no problem with that. But you can look and see, are you looking at these stats because you're trying to live up to one of these variations of pressure? Another sign is constant comparison. Again, going to social media, this is an easy place to feel it and to get a little judgy with yourself or with others. If you're constantly comparing yourself, it can be because you are feeling like you need to be a certain version of yourself or live up to a certain idea. And then finally, another sign of pressure is pressuring other people. This might feel counterintuitive, but is actually really common. And I've seen it and felt it myself. Oftentimes when we have an idea that, oh, we need to live up to XYZ, we think that everybody else does too. If you're talking about the choice, for example, whether or not to get married, if you're talking to your cousin who's been happily married for 10 years, she's probably going to tell you about all the wonderful things of having a lovely, loving partner. And if you talk to your single girlfriend, she might say something really different because she doesn't want to lose her wine buddy. So these people will both pressure you, potentially, in different ways, based on their own situations and the pressures that they feel. Now, what are some other ways to really name this pressure? Because I love going through some exercises that help us to even further identify it for ourselves. The first question I love is, who is your they? Common phrase is, well, they say you can't. Well, you know what they say? Well, who is your they? If you have news that you don't want to tell someone, or you're always worried about, who is that they? It could be a specific person, like we talked about before. It could be family. It could also be a group. It could be people in your religion. It could be a lot of different things. But your they, taking a name to it, can be really helpful, because so often we have this vague they that we don't even identify. We just know that it's not acceptable. That choice doesn't work. So it goes to number 2. What would they choose? Okay, so you know. You always think of, what will my mother say? Well, what would she choose for you? What would she choose for your life? What decisions would she make? My they is not my mother. However, if it were, she would choose for me to live in a small town in Ohio, which unfortunately for her, I don't. But when you take it to this conclusion of what would they choose for you, you might see that it's a pretty extreme difference. You might see that your they would choose a very, very different life for you. And that's okay, because you can choose differently. The point here is to see the difference and to know that that is not what you want. Or if it is, it's okay. But very likely, if you're someone who's feeling the pressure, it won't be. The last question I have here is, how would you feel without the pressure? If you feel pressure in any of these ways, if you have a clear they, or you know that you have one that you can work through and identify, how would you feel if that weren't in your head? How would you feel without the shoulds? For me, I feel a lot better. I feel a lot freer to actually pursue what I want and to be the version of better that I want to be, as opposed to what someone else wants to be. Now, we've covered a lot of different things here, focused on how to be better without pressure. So a few big ideas to recap. Small steps are the only steps. Transformation can be idolized, but that doesn't mean that that's what you have to pursue. Your better might just be getting in a few more steps every day. That's okay. Small steps are the only steps that get you towards your better. Next, you don't have to suffer for growth. Of course, you want to reflect on the bad times. I'm sure 2020 has a lot of lessons for all of us, but it doesn't take a dumpster fire year to learn and grow and improve. You can learn from your accomplishments just as much. And then finally, balance is impossible. And frankly, who even wants it? If you have things like work and family, they can never be fully balanced. And hopefully you do have a preference for one of those things. And it doesn't have to be family, but you get to choose. And that's the point. Your better is custom to you. In conclusion, I'm Elizabeth. I'm just trying to be better every day. So to help me do that, I have a Being Better blog, and I talk about topics like these. And truly, I try to lead because I'm learning. I really take the approach of, this is what I'm trying to do, and I hope that the lessons that I learn help you too. So to that end, if you have any thoughts, you have any lessons of your own you want to share, give me a shout. hello@elizabethmccumber.com. Now, I hope today you've learned a few things you can take with you to being your version of better, whichever one that might be. Thank you.